Let's start with a quick video which captures some of the things discussed before. Hopefully it works.
More devices, more users, more services, more to protect than ever. Bad news, more threats. And they're not just increasing in number. They're changing, evolving, getting smarter every day. No surprise. To keep up, you add more tools, more vendors, more complexity, more cost, more work. Looks like more hasn't fixed anything. It's time for a different approach to security. It's time to think big. Big eats threats for breakfast so you can stop attacks before they happen. Big uses machine learning to detect intrusions hiding in your network. Big is intuitive, constantly learning and evolving to stay ahead of the bad guys. More is still waiting for you to connect the dots. It's going to take security that thinks big to defeat the evolving threats of tomorrow. We're talking 20 billion threats blocked every day, big. It's time for Cisco Security. Now the company who built the internet is here to protect you from it. That's right, Cisco.
Okay. So much for the advertisement here, and some fun for starting. Let's first look a little bit why are we there and what has changed. Now, the classic model, you got a headquarter, you got internet access, you're protected with a firewall, use all the classic things. Unfortunately, that's over. And that's over for the last 10 years. We saw some of this earlier this morning. And we all like it because the new challenges which we have, we would like to connect our devices. IoT, as we saw earlier today, is really on the growth. And it's the security camera, it's the water heater, it's your electricity meter, and many, many other things, and more will come. With 5G, we will see an explosion in this. If we're not able to secure this and connect it to the internet in a secure fashion, this will be the new threat vector. The entrance will come in. Now, the second, on the workload, we heard a lot. Cloud is the key thing, and hybrid, as we saw before, is the way to move forward. We'll shift workloads forward and backward. We need to secure that connection in a automated, AI-driven fashion. The next, and that many haven't really seen yet, is the direct access to the internet. Now, the classic hub and spoke structure for enterprise networks is vanishing more and more. Each and every branch is directly connected to the internet. You use your laptop, you use your mobile device, and it makes it much more difficult for the classic enterprise IT department to secure these connections, to secure the interaction. I mean, to find a new way how to interact at that level. Users like myself work from everywhere. My office is basically where my laptop is, and I would like to use and have the same access, the same methods, the same security here in this conference room, at the airport lounge, in my home office, and of course in my Cisco office. We need to find ways how to make this user-centric, device and application-centric, and go away just from the network focus. And let's not face it, it's a big business. IT security and the threat cap. Something like more than 6 million, or 6 trillion, it's obviously American, European thing here, $6 trillion on damage and cost inflicted by 21. That's our estimate globally. And we see basically there two types of attacks coming in. One, what you see, the simple and random, the phishing, the infected file, trying to stop IT production, trying to steal CPU time for mining bitcoins on your devices and others. The huge criminal organizations are sending this out to each and everybody. They just hope to find the weak entry point, get in. The negligent user who opens that, and then the bad stuff starts afterwards. Just for example, in my private connections in Munich, where I live, something like 3 to 5 doctors got infected in their practitioners and needed to shut down for a few days because somebody opened still a infected PDF or went to a website which was infected, and especially in the SMB space, that is happening every week, every day. Larger corporations are a bit more protected with that, but it's still happening and the business there is growing. The other one which we see is the very much complex and tailor-made attacks, where mainly nation-state attackers across the world are targeting individual organizations, individual people, and being either for very large bribery or theft of large money sums and intangible property, or for nation secrets, and getting into that and trying to steal elements or trying to affect industrial operations. Critical infrastructure attacks, like we heard in Saudi a few weeks ago, on this area. And that's a very different way how to detect that and how to detect it. And our IT security must actually cover with both. Some of the recent news. This is just from the month of September in the German media. Bitkom had a huge report out on that. Security data has been stolen. Health data has been stolen. Anna Schönbohm was saying you would like to stop a country these days, then you just go to the networks and to the power plants and attack the critical infrastructure, and then it's probably much easier than to use the classic military force. So what to do about that? And that's actually, in our point of view, what the market gives you. And we are part of the problem, Cisco included on that, and we hope to be able to solve that. It's more than 500, or by whatever count, 600, 700, 800 different solutions. Pinpoint solutions in most cases who are very effective at attacking a single problem and finding a remedy for that. Hugely effective. But how does it work then in real life? There's more than 20, 30, 40, 50 potential issues, entry points, and things you need to protect. And what we see there out in the market is companies are adding one solution after the other. We did our cybersecurity report annual surveys, how many security vendors usual companies have. And most of them do have much more than 5. Actually, more than 30% of the companies surveyed do have more than 50 different vendors in their IT operations. And you can imagine how difficult and how complex it is to install these, to operate these, to see the threats coming through, and then do the remediation afterwards. And this is one of the key beliefs we have. This needs somehow to end. We need to get the complexity out. We need to work with the industry to integrate the different solutions and find an architecture which is talking to each other, much more automated and integrated from the point of detection to the point of remediation. If you just take that one statistic that over 54% of legitimate alerts, and we know all the non-legitimate alerts, is not being followed through, not being remediated on average because lack of resources, lack of interconnection of the different tools. That means the attackers are still in the network. And that comes to the other statistics here. On average, it takes 100 days for the industry to detect a common threat. It's coming down. 2 or 3 years ago, it was 200 days plus. But best practices with some of our players in the field and Cisco, we are down to 4 to 5 hours with the usual sensors we have in the network. And that's actually where you can change the game and turn it upside down. And that's, I think, the second mantra I would like to give you, and maybe you can work something on that. Threat protection is one thing. You can raise your walls as much as you want, but always there will be somebody who will get through. 100% security is a myth, and I never would sell that, never would underwrite 100% security. It just doesn't happen. But what happens is you can detect it much faster with the help of AI. You can look for anomalies, you can look for bad behaviors in the network, within the applications. And the faster you detect that and find the anomalies, then you can start the remediation. In most cases, hopefully automatically, if you figure out the intrusion, if you shut down a network segment, if you shut down a user, if you shut down an application, or block the malicious request. And then for very difficult cases, you can deploy and use your SOC much more efficiently than you would normally. And we are striving within Cisco to get more than 95% of all the attacks just stopped at that. We come in, detect it, automatically try to shut it down. How does it work? And Cisco, by the way, is the largest internal user of the architecture. I'm showing you some pieces of that. Now first, we try to have a best of breed portfolio across the different elements which you need to protect. It starts obviously with your network, that's where we come from, but we're also very strong at the endpoint, trying to figure out anomalies there, trying to make secure connections back to the headquarters, try to shut down malicious intrusion directly there. And then, as an extension, naturally, the cloud. Securing Docker and Kubernetes applications, securing the cloud access as such, make it as transparent and also as secure as possible. But that's just on the device and the solution point. You need to bolster that by very strong threat analytics. Now we have a team of 250 plus threat researchers who work day in, day out with all the telemetry data they get on finding new threats, finding the sources, finding the identifiers for these threats, and then delivering the necessary information to shut these threats down. They operate over 300 AI-based systems on helping them to automate that. We use, if the customers allow that, data from all our deployed devices worldwide to analyze anomalies, feed that back into the system, and then help to defend the active systems much better in time. So on average, every 5 to 10 minutes, an automated update on threat information gets being pushed to our products. And that helps it to automate the issue very much. But that wouldn't work if you would help, the Security Operations Center with very simplified threat management. So for example, if something pops up in a firewall, it's just one entry point and it looks kind of suspicious. You need to figure out, okay, what machine is it? What application is it? You need to have a simple link into a system which identifies that user. You can shut it down if it's really a bad attack. You need to investigate further. Have you seen this before? Can you potentially, in retrospect, shut down that file from your network? And we have a technology on advanced malware protection where if you see a file within your network and you figure out, let's say 10 hours later, that that file is kind of malicious. You can figure out how that file has been moving through the network. You can see on which PCs, on which servers, on which database it has been stored, and you can shut it down after the fact. Once you had your one negative sample there, you had an infection, and then you can spread it out across the system. And that's part of the remediation effort. They can, with automation, help to act much faster. But Cisco alone, obviously even the largest enterprise security vendor these days, is too small to tackle it all. We have a very strong collaboration with IBM, using their Watson technology and a few other capabilities to increase our offerings. We have a very strong collaboration with Apple, where we help them to build the security code deep into iOS, deep into OS X at the operating system level. That makes these mobile devices much more secure than they are today, when there are more than 150 other security players who either share threat intelligence with us, who are using our remediation APIs, who use sharing of information to shut down the network segments and so on, and help us to collaborate. Now let's see in one example how this works together. Some malicious file comes in. What can we do? First, we can block with DNS level security, Umbrella is the name for that, the request. We can figure out with one of the largest DNS servers worldwide what are malicious domains, who are popping up by the attacker, automatically generated, for example. We use reputation scores to filter at that level, so that the user, be it in the office network or be it on the road, never can access that site, and just block it there. Then, of course, you get the usual firewall blockage where you can stop it, and then you got your classic tools within web security and email security to block the file. These three different methods work together. So if you figure out something, let's say at the DNS layer, and make the clear decision that's a negative, that's a malicious website, we forward that information to the firewall and also to the web security and the email security gateway. Maybe something gets through. Usually, that malicious code needs to activate itself. Most of the things we see today are multi-stage, and they need to call back to some server, download other code, send forward information for the attacked operating system, yada, 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 all that. Again, you can block this at the DNS layer because all of these malicious software pieces need to figure out where's the remote server. Fixed IP addresses are being blocked these days. That goes fairly quickly. Over the DNS layer, it's still wide open. And that's where you can effectively insert and stop the spreading of the bad code throughout the network. The firewall does, the usual blocking on the other side. In the end, if something bad happens, we can figure it out at the endpoint with our advanced malware protection, solve the malicious behavior. We can use that data to retrospectively shut it down at other endpoints and feed back to our DNS layer service, for example. But we also got two other methods to do that. StealthWatch and encrypted traffic analysis is our tool for analyzing network traffic for malicious behavior. It's massively AI-driven. We developed a few years ago technology to even look at the pattern of encrypted traffic. And some of you might know that something like 80% of the traffic is now encrypted and you can't inspect it. So you can't do the normal inspection of the code. But the pattern itself can be recognized as either a Google request, malign, and some stuff behind that are pretty good depending on the content, or at downloading a component of a malware, or at uploading, for example, extracted data. And we now got a positive rate of 98, 99% from data we have. We're improving this with our AI learning tools month by month, and that works very nicely. With some quick overview what we do. I'm jumping now to your other slides I talked about. I just would like to, at the end, focus on two things. Now, one, I mentioned the DNS layer security. I think that's fairly new. A few other companies are doing this. And what does that actually give you? The DNS layer, yes, I talked about that. The next, what it can give as a secure internet gateway is adding additional web access and email access protection on top of that. It can deliver you a cloud-based firewall, which you can configure and which is automated. It can extend into a SaaS control where you can figure out which cloud services are being used within your company, what is shadow IT, what is good, what is malign, and more importantly also, it can connect with different threat intel and keep you updated on that. And that's where we see the evolution, especially for the mobile worker and on the laptop in this very heterogeneous user environment. To sum it up, as time seems running out, what are the 6-7 points I would like to leave you, how you can improve your own security posture? Now, first of all, nothing with IT. Figure out what is really important and prioritize what you choose to defend, because you cannot, never, ever defend 100%. Build the right first line of defense, but also do close the return path, and that's where DNS comes in. And that's actually a huge benefit compared to what's in our common standard right now. Second, increase the visibility in what's happening on the network. Get an understanding for 100% communication, and then with the right tools assess, is it malign, is it positive, is it good, and how you can stop it and how you need to shut it out. Reduce the time to detect, so you'll be much faster taking out the bad guys. Segment the network, that it's not spreading across your complete enterprise network. Keep that segmentation as device-centric as possible, or even better, application-centric as possible, and limit the information traffic there. Lastly, automate and integrate, and then again, train and exercise for the worst case. The few cases I mentioned upfront, I saw in my personal friendship circle, none of them had the right backups. None of them had a disaster recovery in place, and that made it actually much more difficult in the end to survive it and come out of the bad situation. So thank you very much for your time. We are out there for further discussion and wish you a good session.
Thank you, Mr. van der Hoff.
Welcome.